Most people have heard of salmon sperm as something that is injected into the skin. And if you've watched Selling Sunset, as I often do, you see these sort of very glamorous Hollywood women having injected. But this is the non-injectable version. So to your point, it's the kind of softer, more accessible way to
Yes.
to smear your face with salmon sperm.
Yes, absolutely.
This is Clare Varga, Vice President of Content and Director of Beauty at WGSN. Now, I'm super excited about this recording. Our Top Trends episode is always our most downloaded episode of the year. So a big welcome to all of you who've tuned in. I'm Carla, CEO of WGSN. Normally, I'm the only host of our podcast Lives of Tomorrow, but this podcast will also be going out to all of our Create Tomorrow podcast listeners as well, which is normally hosted by Cassandra Napoli. So a welcome over to this side, Cassandra. We're also joined by Clare Varga. So hello, Clare. I'm so excited to have you both here. And while you, our listeners, are going to get some of the biggest trends of 2026 in this episode, please follow our socials. Or even better, if you're not already a subscriber, then get your company subscribed to WGSN before the new year. Because all through January, we'll be releasing more trends of 2026 that we know are going to be of incredible value to your job and your business. Let's get to it. Okay, Cassandra, we're going to start with you, jumping straight on in there. Which top trend of 2026 are you personally most excited about?
I don't know if I'm excited about this, but it is the most interesting to me, and it's digital privilege. We have been talking about this for a number of years now, with it set to really peak in 2026, and that's driven by a lot of macro factors. People are heading offline due to burnout, fatigue. They're yearning for more simpler, less overwhelming, less triggering existences against a backdrop of a polycrisis era, actually. And so WGSN forecasted that 2026 would be the great exhaustion. Again, this is why I said I wasn't exactly thrilled by this, right? But it is really interesting, I think. And in 2026, consumers are going to push back against feelings that come from having to constantly cope with disaster. And with that, they'll embrace something called the slow punk movement. And this is where digital privilege kind of fits in. Those who can afford to go offline, not constrained by work requirements or personal life and socializing requirements, will do so in pursuit of slowing down. And that's what it's all about. I also think that the word privilege is an interesting concept because not everyone has the privilege to even be online not everyone has equal access, right? And so there is a lot of disparity and complexity to this idea and this macro idea as a whole.
Can you give me the definitive explanation of digital privilege?
Yeah, so we say that logging off is the new luxury logo. People who can disconnect without sacrificing their career obligations. That's work from home obligations. That's having to turn in deadlines, right? Or their social standing, right? Because being online for the chronically online generations, young people, Gen Z, Gen Alpha in a way, is a status symbol almost. And so nearly half of young adults at the moment state that online life actually harms their well-being. We know this. We've been tracking this for a number of years now. And it's really about designing more than just digital detox experiences or boredom positive spaces. It needs to be sort of holistically embedded into the offering that brands put out in the next year, whether that's offline sanctuaries at retail stores, think mindfulness offerings, gardens. We started to see a lot of that happening at the store space. Or just going offline in general. People will need to be connected in real life. That's where things like community come into play. Third spaces, increasingly fourth spaces, which we did not coin ourselves, but these are spaces that young people basically who exist in an online community happen to go offline and exist in an in real life community. A lot of that is going to happen where we're already starting to see it with run clubs, but that's going to be more pronounced in the next year where initially, you might have learned about a run club online in an Instagram community space. You engage with others in this space. You sort of build collective effervescence online, but then eventually you come offline and actually go on that run. And that's collective effervescence in real life.
The interesting thing for me about digital privilege is this feels like something just for the sort of 0.0 something percent, because most people have jobs in this day and age which demand some degree of connection. Mm-hmm. And so I think the lens that we're looking at it through here is that aspiration for digital privilege, which is not available 24/7 for many people, but finding pockets of it. And I was thinking about this. My hobby is searching holidays. That's what I love doing, researching going away. And we've gone from this stage where, lots of websites now will tell you what the Wi-Fi speeds are, whether you're going to be able to be well connected. And that is something I factor in because I tend to work even when I'm not working. But then I read a review recently of a place, and they really sort of laboured the point that you are going to be disconnected. And for once, I thought twice rather than this being a problem, would that be something I could embrace? Now, I haven't yet got to the point of being comfortable with that, but it's a new kind of, on my list of things that I would love to be able to do, to be able to be completely disconnected and be okay with that. And it's not just about work, right, as well. It's also about family commitments and those kind of things which come into it. So I find this topic endlessly fascinating.
I miss the days where taking a long haul flight meant that I couldn't be contacted for the period of that flight. And as you were talking, I was thinking, actually, the reason I liked it so much, it was because I could do it in a guilt-free way. Because when you're on holiday, and as you were saying, you still feel like you could check. And the thing that I loved about being on a plane for that time and not being able to, be in the pre-plane Wi-Fi days was because I could literally blame it. I could just say, well, I can't. I'm on a plane. And it took the guilt off of me as well. So I totally get what you're saying.
That's a trend in itself. That's raw dogging the flight. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's a real thing where like you get on a 12-hour flight and you just stare into the abyss. And it's like cathartic for a lot of people. That's why they do it.
The thought of that makes me feel horrible, that you would not so much the not being able to access things online, but you would just sit and stare at something for 12 hours. I find that utterly mind-blowing. Okay, let's move on from digital privilege. So Claire, same question to you. Maybe I should reframe it. Not necessarily the trend that you're most excited about. Which is the trend that you think is going to carry most weight next year? Or it can be the one you're most excited about.
No, it's like Cass said, it's not one I'm necessarily excited about, but it's one that seems to be dominating every conversation I have with my beauty head on at the moment. I'm talking, but also it seems that every industry that we serve in WGSN is being affected by Ozempic. So the trend that I've picked to talk about first is Fozempic, sometimes called Nozempic as well. I think the thing that is so fascinating about this is, as I say, GLP-1 drugs are dominating every conversation we're having in beauty and wellness, but in every other industry as well. I was talking to Jen from Food and Drink the other day, and then talking to Gemma in interiors, and obviously people are eating less, but Gemma was talking about how it was creating more opportunity for smaller plates and what that was doing in design. But obviously in beauty, what we're seeing is this whole counter industry emerging, and I think that's what's always really interesting when you have one of these very culturally dominating trends, is that you get the sort of counter trends and then you get the complementary trends as well, and that's sort of what we're seeing here. So I guess to explain Fozempic in its basic form, it's for people who want the sculpt without the script, is how we've been talking about it. So and it's for a lot of different people. Obviously, GLPs are very expensive. So it's for people who can't afford it. It's for people who are a bit more wellness first, and they're a bit more pharma hesitant. So they don't want to go down the injection route, but they still want those same sculpting, lifting, all the same sort of results that you're getting without that prescription. So we're seeing lots of products emerging that are sort of alternatives. So, there's a lot of supplements that are like GLP-1 alternatives. So berberine supplements, lots of sculpting patches. Obviously, we had the Skims face wrap, which, obviously grabbed lots of headlines, and that's got lots of collagen fibers in it as well. All these sort of products, and it's, again, we can see it in the language of beauty that's coming through in the products. Words like sculpting, lifting, they're all uptrending. People are looking for those results, but as I say, without the cost and without the injectables as well. And it's absolutely fascinating because it is touching absolutely everything.
Yeah, we had a conference, a client conference recently for our clients in the Bev Alc space, or the alcohol drink space, and it was a question for all of them because it's having an impact not just on how much we eat but how much we drink as well, and we're seeing that in the data at the moment. And what you're seeing come out of that, especially in the restaurant space or bar space, is these kind of small cocktails now to try and sate that want and need, but with the knowledge that people just aren't necessarily going to drink so much if they're on GLP-1s, which is quite fascinating. So again, it's a brilliant example of a macro trend that is now filtering down everywhere. And to your point now, we're looking for an alternative, or lots of people are looking for an alternative. But I also think there's the kind of the impact on, the body positivity movement as well. On the catwalks, on the red carpet, you saw lots of women, and I would say probably more women, different shapes and sizes. And that seems to have regressed somewhat.
Yeah.
And that has to be an impact of GLP-1s.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's when I was talked about, you have the sort of counter trends and you have the complementary trends as well. Weight loss is always going to be a tricky, it's a divisive subject. But what GLP-1s have done is definitely put skinny back on the top of conversation list. Now, it's not that it's sort of undone the body positivity movement. That it's still going strong, and there's lots of conversations. And I think what's quite interesting in the GLP-1 conversations that we're having is that it's not about being super skinny as such. There will always be people that abuse a trend or use things for wrong reason. The GLP-1 conversations tend to be around giving people back control. And what you hear people is as much that people are talking about the freedom it gives them, it takes the food noise out of their mind. But it has absolutely kickstarted lots of conversations around weight loss. And this is why you are seeing these alternatives coming in, but it's actually sort of kick-started a sort of subcategory within the beauty industry. So whether you're losing weight loss because you're on GLP-1s, whether you're losing weight loss because you've just decided to get fit, or whether you've lost weight maybe because of hormonal reasons or because you're ill, there are everybody's has the same symptoms. If you've lost weight, skin laxity, changes in your hair, and there are now lots of products that are appearing that are sort of addressing that as well. So it's as you said, it's a great example of a trend that sort of kickstarts all these other little sort of spin-off trends as well.
Now, to hear more about our top trends in greater detail, be sure to register for our LinkedIn Live on January the 13th, when we'll go through all WGSN's top trends with Lisa White, Director of Strategic Forecasting and Creative Direction, on LinkedIn Live, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, we're going to get back into it now. So, Cassandra, what's next on your list?
I have gatekeeping on the list, and I think that's a really interesting shift. What we're saying is that exclusivity is making a comeback, which is really a shift away from what we've seen in recent years when it comes to online life, right? In the past, you might have seen like curation as a service. You get online and an influencer tells you exactly what to do, which might have been good for you, Carla, in terms of travel. They tell you exactly what to do when you go to a place, right? Like you have to go here for dinner, book this, book that. But what we're seeing now is that a lot of consumers, social audiences, etc., they're keeping their treasures closer to their chests. So individuality and exclusivity matter more to them. So they're becoming sort of guardians of their shopping and travel tips, as opposed to get ready with me and I'll tell you every single thing that I wore in this photo so that you can emulate the exact same look. They're actually choosing what to share and what not to share. Same thing goes for travel tips. Like instead of here's everything I did in Barcelona, it's actually like because of the result of over tourism and a lot of locals getting quite mad at the fact that people are flocking to these places, potentially making costs rise, potentially staying too long, right? And actually driving the locals out. They're withholding some of those kind of secrets of the place and trying to make it feel a little bit more exclusive, not for the masses, just to kind of safeguard the area that they love and that they call home or that they don't really want to share with the rest of the world. So that's the big shift in terms of social culture that we're seeing.
My husband is not big on social media at all, and we have a favorite holiday island that we go to, which if anyone does follow me on Instagram will know about it. And he gets so cross. But I tell everyone about it because lots of people know we go to this particular place. And so I have this long email ready to go, which literally has like, the times the ferries leave, like how much the taxi costs from the airport to the ferry port, exactly where to go, what to order at the different restaurants. And he's like, I don't want to see any of these people when I go. go on holiday. Stop telling everybody where to go. So, I mean, maybe he'll claim that he's ahead of his time on gatekeeping when we have the next conversation about me sharing our tips.
I think it is an interesting generational shift, though, if you zoom out. Like perhaps older people, older populations were naturally a little bit more of a gate kept, generation. I think the interesting thing was that Gen Z was never that way. And it was because of the product of like oversaturation of trends, the rapid acceleration of trend cycles, nostalgia, acceleration, things of that nature. But they're interestingly protecting the products and spaces that reflect their identity in new ways now, and trying to avoid more copycats because they're trying to monetize on it. So imagine that you shared that list and then you were monetizing it and then everyone was there. It becomes less special. And from a brand perspective, I think gatekeeping is going to be an interesting shift away from the masses to speaking to the niche communities that they serve. A couple of brands that do it well is like a lot of brands. There's one brand in the UK that has a WhatsApp group that you can communicate with clients. The Percival UK brand, they use WhatsApp to communicate with VICs. They call it the closest circle group, operating alongside a private Instagram where they share, wares that people can access, and the people on WhatsApp are made aware of it. I think there's an influencer we just wrote about. I think her name is like Wendy's Look, but she has a gate-kept website that changes. It's password protected. It changes every single week, the password, I believe. And it's stuff that she's selling or that she's promoting that she doesn't want the masses to have access to. There's one creator, Danielle Filong. She hosted 25 of her closest, best followers for a free workout class that basically took her day in the life videos into the physical world. Again, digital privilege, right? Being able to go offline with your favorite creator. And it was special. It was just for the masses. And that's the future of loyalty schemes, essentially, is these sort of close-knit communities and gate-kept communities.
Really interesting. Claire, your take on this?
Yeah, I have to jump in because in beauty, I think one of the earliest signals we saw of this, and I remember us all talking about it, was gatekeeping my fragrance, the hashtag just trending massively on TikTok. And, as similar to you sharing your holiday destinations, that awful feeling when somebody says to you, oh, you smell lovely, what's your fragrance? And you tell them and then they wear it, it is a lot of that. And you know, oh, what's that lipstick? And you're like, damn, why did I share that? And I think as well, it's funny that you mentioned generations as well, because I think I'm conditioned to just be polite and spill everything.
Yeah.
Whereas one of the reasons I love Vinted so much is now because it's given me this out. Because when anybody says to me, oh, where's that from? I just say, oh, Vinted. So I don't have to explain. But yeah, I think the gatekeeping my fragrances really sums this up. It's about that individuality, but off the back of it, we've seen lots of scent layering kits so that you're mixing your own, you're actually creating your own signature scent and you're adjusting it on the day. But I seeing just so much more of that, gatekeeping your finds and not sharing it and keeping it to be that little special thing for you.
Okay, well, I'm making it basically part of your job at WGSN is you have to share those things with me. Like okay. I demand it. In the office yesterday, I walked around to one corner and I was like, someone here smells amazing. And I didn't stop until I found the person and they told me what their fragrance was. It was one of the boys and it was amazing. I was like, I can wear that. That works well for me. Okay, Claire, what's the next of our top trends you want to share with the listeners?
Oh, the next one I wanted to talk about was one that our fashion and accessories team flagged. And I think this really speaks to the ex-designer in me, and it's Guardian Design. Guardian Design is almost like fashion's, I guess, safety first glow up. It's beautiful design, and I think I'm a commuter again, so it's something that speaks to me a lot. But it's really about people having to be far more vigilant about their valuables as they're moving around, and it's not just travel; it's just all the time. So the team started tracking it in terms of lots of anti-theft details that were appearing in garments, in accessories and apparels, and designed to sort of deter people it was harder to get into pockets, different fastenings and things. But really, it's got sort of shifted from being, purely functional and to being absolutely beautiful as well, and very design led. I love anything that's like where, functional design comes together with anything that's sort of really beautiful. And I think this is sort of style meets security meets that emotional reassurance that we want as well, and it's sort of baked into everything. So it's anti-slash products, it's RFID pockets as well. It's just all these different clasps. It's actually thinking about where the branding on things go. There's a little bit of nostalgia about it as well, which I think is really nice. One, because we're sort of thinking about times when things were more safe, but there's a return of they're called Kisk clasps. You probably remember if you ever had a little purse when you were a little girl with those little twisty sort of thing. They were really hard on your thumbs to sort of open. Lots of things like that coming back on bags and beautiful clasps, but then just also lots of really clever stuff, little hidden pockets in socks and just in unexpected places. Lots of detachable stuff, lots of keychains that are then absolutely beautiful. And they're piggybacking off the back of the sort of collectible trend. So you've got all your little keychains on. Lots of carabiners, all sorts of things. And I love it when you see, something that's a need that is how we're having to live now, but then it's taken and it's also becomes a statement and it becomes something absolutely beautiful as well. So it speaks to me on a lot of levels.
Style and substance.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, right. I'm going to let you both have one more trend. So Cassandra, back to you. Your final top trend for 2026.
I'm going to select the macro trend, unserious everything. I think it's a nice way to sort of round out my selections because it's quite, it's about sort of humor and
a little bit more cheerful.
Yeah, it's cheerful. We're saying here that anything serious is out and anything unserious is in because of the backdrop of the poly crisis, meaning multiple crises happening simultaneously. We've got the great exhaustion, overwhelming stress, tension. Consumers are just really burnt out and they're seeking powerful tools for coping and dealing with all this. And it sort of evolves from gallows humor, which is sort of like a dark humor, and comedic relief, which we presented back in 2025 for the forecast. It's sort of like a distraction from all of the chaos that's happening around us. In 2026, we've also talked about this idea of like the split brand personality. That's a hard thing to say, where brands have to be quite serious and talk about the things that matter, what their sustainability initiatives are. But also they need to be quite fun and quirky and distract consumers. And I think a brand that had done that well when we wrote about it was like Aloe. So they're quite serious and quite high glam in some of their advertisements, but their TikTok was very sort of absurd and surrealist. I think that's what this is about too. It stems from brain rot. It stems from things like pushing back against the really serious noise and the pings that we're trying to have ping minimalism. You might have heard that word thrown around in some of our forecasts. So it's really about play, brain rot. It's about incorporating absurd storytelling into the mix. And brain rot can actually be two different things. It's low quality memes and surrealist sort of AI generated slop. And both could actually be good for us. There is some research out there that says that there's like, in feelings of mental exhaustion and cognitive decline, actually consuming online content can lead to emotional desensitization and cognitive overload. So not great. But for the chronically online generations, as I mentioned before, Gen Z, absurdity really helps them process their feelings, their emotions. It helps them cope with just the heaviness of the world around them. And so a couple of brands have done it quite well. Liquid Death does it well. This like unseriousness. The Ordinary, speaking of beauty, Clare, The Ordinary is so good at this. They use satire constantly across their marketing. And it's just very unserious. It's very playful. It leans into joy. And I think it's really needed in a time of just high stress and high tension.
I love this one because it feels like the natural evolution of glimmers. And everyone knows I love glimmers. I still talk about glimmers years after we first forecasted it as a big trend. And this feels like the sort of the fun manifestation of glimmers. I can see this one working across product, across retail, across marketing, And that's also a really good sign of something which has longevity and meaning. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. Okay, Claire, your final top trend for 2026.
Okay, I'm probably going to bring the tone down slightly. I'm going to finish with an ingredient because we always like to have an ingredient in our trends. And so the ingredient is PDRN. Yes, it's made from salmon sperm. Yes, it's going to be big. Yes, you're just going to have to embrace the ick, I'm afraid.
Can I tell everyone the story about this? So for our listeners, our top trends are we're having great fun on this podcast, but they're really, really important. And so it's a piece of forecasting that I personally sign off. And when it came into me, I was like, it's not salmon sperm, it's trout sperm. And the person who had brought this forecast into me hadn't been one of the forecasters who wrote it, so disappeared to try and find out. Anyway, and then Claire came in to tell me that I'd got it absolutely wrong. It is salmon sperm, and wherever I'd got my information from was incorrect.
No, you weren't technically correct. I think it turned out that rainbow trouts were actually salmon. Technically,
yes, there we are.
I think we were in there, but yeah,
we were both right.
I mean, PDRN, it's been around. I think we first started talking about it around about 2 years ago, and it's come out of K-beauty and in the sort of professional sort of scene, and we've been tracking it for a while. So I'm sure lots of people listening will have heard of it because it is out there, but it is going to be huge next year. It's going to be a breakout. It's part of lots of trends that are sort of coming together. It taps into all that idea around, prejuvenation, longevity. It's a quite a gentle alternative to retinols and things. It's interesting, but it does have this amazing origin story, which people just love, and it just connects with people. And we're seeing it in everything. And so at the moment, it's serums coming through in sort of the normal topical skincare. And what we're expecting to see as we go into next year is that skinification of everything again. So we'll start to see it turn up we're already seeing in supplements. We're seeing it in face masks, some really interesting little sort of spicule face masks and things coming in. So it has nice delivery systems. I actually have my own little PDRN stick here, which I made my son bring me back from Korea on a trip earlier this year, and it's like a little deodorant stick. Absolutely love it.
You just kind of smear it on your face.
Yeah, you just sort of put it on like any way you want. I'm going like this because this is where I put it mostly on my neck.
But I think what's interesting about this one is it kind of ties back to the GLP-1 or the Ozempic, which is most people have heard of salmon sperm as something that is injected into the skin. And if you've watched Selling Sunset, as I often do, you see these sort of very glamorous Hollywood women having injected. But this is the non-injectable version. So to your point, it's the kind of softer, more accessible way to smear your face with salmon sperm.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it also, it speaks to the other conversation that's been happening around K-beauty. There was a little sort of, Kobe, it's had its day and people are moving on. Korea is still the place where a lot of the biggest innovations are coming out of. But also, I think what it shows is the global consumer appetite for K-beauty products. They're trusted, but they're just interesting and they're new. And it's interesting because obviously we've just launched our TikTok dashboard, and one of the things we used to test when we were doing the testing was PDRN, and it's really interesting to see a couple of years ago non-existent, and how the spike in conversations. I mean, it's huge. It's just a vertical takeoff almost. And it's just really interesting for us to see how people are talking about it and the products they're engaging with. So we're calling this one out as an absolute banger for next year in beauty. It's going to be everywhere.
I mean, I still just want to know how somebody worked out that ingredient was going to make us all look younger.
Have you ever seen wrinkly salmon? I mean, they have beautiful skin, let's face it. That's the only proof of concept I can come up with.
Okay, and on that interesting note, we will leave it there. Thank you both so much. For our listeners, if you want to read all the trends that we're forecasting for 2026, then please head over to the WGSN website, or you can register for our LinkedIn Live on January the 13th. We'll be running through all of WGSN's top trends with Lisa White, Director of Strategic Forecasting and Creative Direction, at 4 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. We'll also be pushing all the forecasts for our top trends for 2026 on all our social media channels, so keep an eye on there to ensure that you are up to speed on the trends that will have a major impact for you and your business next year. Thank you all for tuning in today. I'll return with a new episode of Lives of Tomorrow in 14 days' time. My name's Carla Buzasi. I'm the CEO of WGSN, and I'll see you next time.